Hello, everyone, and welcome to our annual Veterans Day celebration at Marist College. I'm Amy Woods, a graduate of the class of 1997 and Executive Director of Alumni Relations. On behalf of the Offices of College Advancement and Student Affairs, we thank you for taking time out of your day to spend with us. If you encounter any audio issues during today's presentation, you do have the option to dial in by telephone, so I will provide that number in the chat box right now. Due to the number of participants joining us today, we have muted all lines except for the speakers. Please use the chat option for any technical questions you might have, and we recommend you don't send private messages to the guest speakers as they may not see them while they're presenting. There are some online participants joining us that I would like to recognize today. From our Board of Trustees, I'd like to say hello to John O'Shea, who is a Navy veteran. John actually joined us this morning on campus for our flag raising. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to past trustee and president of the Alumni Association, Brendan Burke from the class of 1968, who is a Marine Corps and Vietnam War veteran, who we think is watching at home in South Carolina with his wife, Betsy. We also have some members of the Alumni Association Executive Board with us. Eileen Altabelli from the class of 1982 is the current president of the Alumni Association. And both Paul Rinn and Tom McKiernan, both from the class of 1968, are past presidents of the Alumni Association. It's now my pleasure to introduce Kevin C. Weinman, the fifth president of Marist College. President Weinman assumed office on October 4th, succeeding President Emeritus Dennis J. Murray. President Weinman came to Marist from Amherst College, where he served as Chief Financial and Administrative Officer and had broad financial and administrative responsibilities. He was a vital partner in the development and execution of Amherst's strategic plan and their $625 million capital campaign. He also instituted rigorous and inclusive financial planning and budgeting processes that helped Amherst achieve key priorities in student life and well-being, diversity, equity, and inclusion, academic support, new academic and residential facilities, and a comprehensive climate action plan. A scholar of the history of urban planning and public policy, President Weinman earned his Ph.D. in history from the University of New Hampshire, his MA in history from the University of Colorado, and his MBA from the University of North Carolina. He received his bachelor's degree in accounting and history from Notre Dame. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming President Kevin Weinman.
So it's important today to honor the great sacrifices made by our veterans, of course, but it's also important to honor the sacrifices made by their families. Veterans and their families alike have our deep respect and gratitude. Like many of you, I'm proud today to honor veterans not only nationwide, but also in my family. My father and my late grandfather served their country admirably, and I'm extremely proud of them, as I know you are proud of the veterans in your family as well. So as we honor veterans today, it's important to remember to celebrate them every day. We also must assess whether we're doing all we can to take care of those who did so much to take care of us. Truthful reckoning of our national history on this point is mixed at best. Some have answered the call to do more for our veterans. One such person in our community, of course, is Tommy Sir Helen, Associate Professor of English, who led the Pledge of Allegiance at the flag raising this morning. As many of you know, Tommy spent 4 months, excuse me, Tommy, may have felt like 4 years, but it was 4 months walking across the country in 2019 to elevate awareness and raise funds to address homelessness and mental health struggles amongst our veterans, which occur at significantly higher rates than among the general population. Veterans sacrifice much to serve the nation that they love during their period of service. They knew and accepted this sacrifice. However, their sacrifices should not continue after their service, but far too often they do. Now, to be clear, Tommy's contributions were extraordinary, and the rest of us do not need to walk across the country to make a difference in the lives of veterans, but we all should act to whatever degree we can. So as we gather here today to honor and celebrate the contributions of veterans, I ask each of us to reflect upon how we can extend our support for them beyond an annual celebration, as important as this celebration is. At an institution like Marist College, founded in the spirit of service that defines us to this very day, we know we can always do more, both as an institution and as individuals. Work is well underway to evaluate how we can do this at Marist, and we will have more to say over time about how we will elevate our support of veterans within the Marist College community and beyond. As individuals, I hope you will also commit to supporting those who have served us so well. So thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks to our veterans. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Marist student Austin Miller, who will in turn introduce our guest speaker. Austin is originally from Millerton, New York, and was active duty military police in the U.S. Navy from 2013 to 2018. He then transferred to the reserves from 2018 to 2020. During that time, Austin was stationed at the Naval Base in Bremerton, Washington, the Naval Air Station in Key West, Florida, and at Naval Weapons Station Earl in New Jersey. Austin transferred to Marist from Rockland Community College with an associate degree in criminal justice. He's currently a junior in the pre-law program, majoring in criminal justice, minoring in history, go history, and studying in our paralegal program. He hopes to attend law school after graduation. I'd like to thank Austin for helping to revive the Marist Student Veterans Organization, also known as Fox Company, which provides a support system to student veterans on campus. So now I'm pleased to welcome Austin Miller and ask him to introduce today's keynote speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for this opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker today, who is Charles Howlett from the class of 1968. Chuck, as he likes to be called, is a professor emeritus of Molloy College and a recipient of the Molloy College Alumni Association's Distinguished Faculty Award. He received his Ph.D. in American Social and Intellectual History from the University of Albany and his Master of Education in Public Policy from Columbia University Teachers College. Chuck is the author of numerous books on peace and conflict resolution history and recently received the International Peace History Society's Lifetime Achievement Award. He is a former Fulbright Scholar, National Endowment for the Humanities Grant awardee, Woodrow Wilson Foundation Teaching Fellow, Brown University Teaching Fellow, and a recipient of a Kaiser Foundation grant for studies in labor history. He received a scholarship to attend Harvard University's Institute in Writing, Reading, and Civic Education. Prior to being a college professor, he taught at Amityville Memorial High School on Long Island. Chuck completed his doctorate while serving in the United States Marine Corps Reserve after his extended active duty as a crypto telegraphic communications MOS 2815 during the Vietnam War. He later earned his wings as a major in the United States Air Force Auxiliary, where he flew as a mission observer for search and rescue missions. At the same time, he was selected to serve as an Air Force Academy Admissions Liaison Officer, ROTC, in the civilian retired category. And in 2009, was awarded the Academy's Admissions Liaison Officer of the Year for the entire Northeast region of the United States. Chuck also was a commissioned officer in the New York Guard, where he was assigned to the 106th Rescue Wing of the Air National Guard Unit in West Hampton, New York, and until his official Guard retirement with the famous 88th Brigade, the Irish Brigade of the Civil War notoriety, attached to the Fighting 69th Infantry. Upon his retirement from the 88th, he was awarded the rank of Brevet Honorary Colonel and a ceremony held at Fort Hampton in Brooklyn. He is the son of Jack Howlett, an inductee of the New York State Senate Veterans Hall of Fame for his acts of gallantry, valor in the Philippines during World War II. He is the father of two decorated combat veterans still serving today, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Howlett, a pilot and graduate of the Air Force Academy, and Major Patrick Howlett, a tank commander and graduate from West Point. His wife, Patricia, is the former New York State Bar Association's Pro Bono Attorney of the Year in Elder Law and Persons with Disabilities. He and Patricia still reside in West Islip, New York today. And Chuck, thank you so much for your service, and thank you very much for joining the Marist community today.
Okay. Thank you, Austin. I appreciate that. It's a nice introduction, and I'm sure you enjoyed your time down at Key West, serving down there as part of your active duty. There's a few shout outs I would like to give to certain members of the Marist community for their service. I'd like to thank Joan Gambeski, Shatsy, for making this possible, for Amy Woods, for Chris from the Hudson River Valley Institute, for President Emeritus Murray for making Marist College what it is today, to President Kevin Weinman, best of luck on your service to the community and to the Marist family. Thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck. And I would also like to thank another colleague of mine, a classmate, Joe Walsh, for digging through the photographic archives and coming up with a couple of the images that Amy will show during the course of this presentation. I would also like to give a shout out to Major Mike Morrow, class of 2006, I believe. Mike served as my son Sean's deputy commander for the 92nd AMX out at Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington. It's one of the largest squadrons in the entire United States Air Force. So Mike, keep aiming high and keep going with your career. And most importantly, I would also like to give a personal shout out, words of encouragement to my fellow classmate, fellow Marine, Brendan Burke, a man of courage, of honor, of service and dedication. Keep fighting the good fight, Brendan. We're all with you, Semper Fi. I'd like to begin my remarks with a backstory to an article that I wrote in 1990, I believe, for the Marist Alumni magazine, entitled Saying Goodbye at the Wall. It all began on September 25th, 1970. I had left graduate school. I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship. I was always a hardworking, studious individual. And I left graduate school, joined the Marines Reserves, was selected for extended active duty in a program that had a top secret clearance, and gave up a scholarship to pursue my doctorate. I guess my conscience really got to me, having a grandfather that served in the Navy in World War I, a father who served in the Army, actually, actually was in the Philippines before World War II broke out. And of course, his acts of valor and gallantry led him to become an inductee into the Veterans Hall of Fame. So I felt it was my obligation, and along with some of my fellow classmates who were already serving or who had been drafted into the military, that it was my turn. So I gave up the scholarship, joined the Marines, put on extended active duty, and it's September 25th, 1970. And I'm just about finishing the program. I did very well. Again, I worked hard. I knew how to use a slide ruler. Anybody knows what that is today? No calculators. Learned a lot about math and physics. I must admit, the closest I came to taking advanced calculus at Marist was probably walking by Brother Carroll's office in Donnelly Hall. But needless to say, I'm in class, beautiful San Diego, nice weather, and I get a notice. My instructor says, Chuck, go to the CO's office. Okay, fine. All right, well, what's going on? So I went and I saw this somber look at the staff sergeant sitting at the desk in the CO's office, and he said, "You got a phone call?" I said, "Okay." So got the phone. It was my uncle. The call was calling to tell me that there was a death in the family. It happened to be my grandmother, an Irish immigrant who came over in 1916. She raised 10 children. My mother was the oldest. My mother actually dropped out of school in 3rd grade to help raise the other children. My father, who did serve in the military, dropped out of high school and joined the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression to help out the family, and then joined the Army in 1937. And I was the oldest male in both families to attend college. So I felt it was important to do the best that I possibly could to make them proud. But this phone call was very upsetting because I was very close to my grandmother. And needless to say, the CO was a good guy, and he said, "Hey, Chuck, look, you did very well in this program. We're just going to cut your orders, send you home, attend the funeral. You don't have to come back. You're practically done anyway. And I just report into the 11th Communications Battalion right near the Brooklyn Navy Yard." And the unit itself was rather interesting because if you stepped outside the front, you could look up and there was a Manhattan Bridge. And then if you turned to your left, there was the Brooklyn Bridge. So it was ideally situated right near the Brooklyn Navy Yard. But so they cut my orders. That afternoon, I'm on a flight out of Lindbergh Airfield in San Diego, headed to LAX. at LAX with Delta Airlines. I switched planes for an overnight flight back to JFK. However, it was a trip that I'll never forget for many reasons, but it was not a straight direct flight. From LAX, it went to Dallas, and then from Dallas to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to JFK. So needless to say, it was a long flight. But on the flight, I sat in my seat in the coach, and there was a flight attendant, and she just didn't bother talking to me, or just kind of ignored me. And when the flight left LAX, and then finally we landed in Dallas during a thunderstorm, we had about an hour layover, and till the passengers deplaned and those who were coming on board for their flight to either Atlanta or to JFK. And needless to say, the young gentleman gets on the plane, sits next to me in Dallas. He boarded the plane in Dallas. We struck up a conversation, and he said, "Yeah, I'm in law school." He said, "I graduated from CW Post. I'm attending the University of Arkansas Law School. I'm heading home to see the family." I said, "Oh, that's great." The flight attendant came over and asked him, "Would you like a drink? Do you want something to eat? Would you like a pillow?" And he said, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting something to drink and something to eat." And, well, she did. She took care of him. She still ignored me. And I was in uniform. Didn't say anything. When the plane finally landed in Atlanta, it was probably around 4 a.m. in the morning. I don't quite remember the hour, but it was late. And I finally walked up to her, and I said, "Gee," I said, "You've ignored me on this flight." I said, "You asked the young man next to me," I said, "Would you like a pillow? Would you like something to drink?" But I said, "You just didn't bother talking to me." And she looked me straight in the eye, and she said, "Well, I hate the war in Vietnam. You're a Marine. Marines just kill." And I was just stunned, and I looked at her straight in the eye, and I said, "Well, for your information," I said, "I gave up a scholarship for my doctorate." I said, "because I felt it was my obligation to serve." And I said, "I understand the background, how you may feel in light of what occurred with the incursion into Cambodia in May of 1970. Kent State occurred at that time, the Kent State issues, tragedy, Jackson State. So the mindset, most of the public at that time was not very easily disposed to continuing to support the war." But I said, "I might understand how you feel about the war." And I said, "You may not love the uniform that I'm wearing." And I looked her straight in the eye, and I said, "But at the very least, you should respect it for the sacrifices that we've made and those who have come before me." And I looked her straight in the eye. And then and at that time, you could deplane. If you had an hour layover or so, you could leave the plane. And I did. You could walk down. So I went down to the concession stand at Atlanta International Airport, Hartsfield, and purchased a candy bar and came back on, sat down. And then when the plane finally landed at JFK, it was about 7:30 in the morning. My older sister was there to pick me up. And as I was walking out, she looked at me and she said, "I'm sorry for what I said." And I looked her straight in the eye and said, "You should." That stuck with me for a long time. Of course, naturally, I went back to graduate school, was pursuing the doctorate, and it was December of 1972, and I am home visiting the family for the holidays. And at that time, my family got two newspapers here on Long Island. One was Newsday, which was delivered in the morning, and the other one was the Long Island Press, which came in the afternoon. So I was thumbing through the Long Island Press, and I happened to see a story, and it was an obituary. And I recognized immediately who the individual was. It was my classmate from Marist, Frank Egan. And it recounted that he was killed in December in Vietnam. And I was shook because what flashed back in my memory was an event, actually, historical event, which many of us forgot about, was on November the 9th, 1965. I came back in from one of Doc Goldman's grueling soccer practices, 2 hours, you kill yourself. Came back in, showered, came down. Champagne Hall had just opened up that fall. And I was down having something to eat, and Frank walks in, sweatshirt. He just finished crew practice and sat down. And both of us were having dinner together when the lights started to flicker. And we quickly finished our meal. All of a sudden, all the power went out. It was the great blackout of 1965, when a large portion of Northeast United States was without any electricity. And we didn't know what to make of it. And we thought, oh, God, this is an aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is the Cold War still going on. What happened? But all the power, there's a transmission failure at Niagara Falls. And all of the power from cities like New York City were without electricity, power, Boston was out, power. So we all went back to our rooms. I'm turning on the transistor. We're all turning on the transistor radios that we had, battery powered, to find out what the story was. And that's what happened. It was a transmission failure. And about 3 hours later, the power came back on. But that event, that having dinner with Frank that evening, it stuck in my mind. And so needless to say, when I saw that he had lost his life in Vietnam, I was quite shook. And for years, of course, in the aftermath, you come back, you kind of blend into society. You don't really talk too much about your service. And I didn't serve in Vietnam. I was in the reserves. I was fortunate. But still, you know, there was this attitude that the public really didn't appreciate your service. And there were very few. There were no welcome home parades until many years later. But needless to say, that stuck with me. And when the wall was built in 1982, it was dedicated in 1982, I had a hard time coming to grips with going down to say goodbye to Frank. But finally, in 1990, I just said, I had two little boys. My wife and I, we took a trip down to Washington, D.C. And I said, oh, I'm going to go visit the wall. I'm going to finally say goodbye to Frank. And needless to say, I got to the kiosk. And you know, they have this park service guy, and he prints it all out, the information, tells you exactly where to go. Remember, there's over 58,000 names on that wall. And I got up to the kiosk, and I drew a complete blank. Couldn't remember. And he said, buddy, he said, it's not unusual. He said, look, just walk away for a little while, gather your thoughts, and it will come to you. And sure enough, it did. And I told him Francis Xavier Egan. And so I said, Captain, United States Air Force, blah, blah, blah. He prints it out. I got the printout, and I took one look at it. And I said, holy jeez. I said, his birthday is my birthday, November the 11th. I said, we're both born on Veterans Day. And it kind of, I said, I have to do something. I have to put something on paper. Frank gave his life. And I kind of couched it in the idea that I am here celebrating my birthday and having my drink for my birthday, and Frank isn't. So I wrote that article saying goodbye at the wall. And I was literally amazed at the response, heartwarming. And of course, my classmates gathered together and said, well, break out your checkbooks and let's donate and buy a shell in Frank's honor. And we did. And of course, for our 25th reunion, we dedicated the shell in Frank's memory. And I know, thanks to Joe Walsh, we were able to get a couple of photographs there of President Emeritus Murray dedicating the shell, and then another one of myself and our classmates standing, and there it is. We look much younger then, of course, but there's, you can see Paul Rinn. Next to me is Jimmy Barnes. We all are dedicating that to Frank. And so I was very happy about that. You know, Frank's memory is living on. But some 40 years later, I guess it was about 2012, it was a Saturday morning. I'll never forget it. And there's President Murray dedicating the shell. And I'll never forget, I got this phone call a Saturday morning, and his deep voice, the gentleman says, hey, you know, he said, he identified himself. He says, I live in Florida. He said, are you the guy that wrote that story about saying goodbye at the wall? And I said, well, yes, I am. I wrote it in memory of my classmate, Frank Egan. And he said, well, you know, he said, that article has been circulating around, going all over the place. And he said, but somebody from Wisconsin contacted me and shared that piece that you wrote about this fallen airman, fallen Air Force captain. I said, yeah. And he said, well, I want to let you know. He said, I was the helicopter pilot that retrieved Frank's body. And he said, your article moved me, but he said, I had to call you and let you know. This is 40 years later, out of the clear blue. And he said, he just gave me the details. And he said, buddy, he said, there was so many guys. The term they used was a dust off, but he said, there were so many guys that we got. He said, so you don't remember them all. But he said, this one I did because of your article. So it still lives on. And it still lives on. And I was just happy that my classmates were able to do something in Frank's memory. I believe he may be the only Marist veteran who was killed in action. But it's important to remember what veterans do. And last year, an attorney, he is a Marine reservist, he's a major in the Marine Reserves, decided he runs a veterans clinic at Truro Law College here in Suffolk County on Long Island. And he said he wanted to do something for veterans and make them more cognizant of what's out there as part of what legal services they can draw upon. And he said, I know your wife's a member of the bar. He said, can you put something together that describes what a veteran is? And he said, we can run it in the Suffolk Lawyer. That's the publication of the Suffolk County Bar Association. And I said, I'd be honored to do that. And I would like to read what I did, portions of it. And I know the beginning is what President Weinman just indicated with a little historical background as to how it transitioned from Armistice Day to Veterans Day. But I will read you the portion that I think is most relevant about what is a veteran. And I chose the title of the article, The Mission We Choose to Serve. From 1918 to 1954, Americans continuously celebrated what was then called Armistice Day on November 11. But in the aftermath of the deadliest war of all time, World War II, and the recent conflict in Korea in the early years of the Cold War, President Dwight D. Eisenhower encouraged Congress to pass a law changing the name to Veterans Day. Recurring wars in the 20th century necessitated a name change given the numerous sacrifices Americans had made on the field of battle. Thus, beginning in 1954 to the present, we now recognize November 11 as Veterans Day, a day commemorating all who have served in our nation's military forces. However, celebrating Veterans Day is not all about parades, balls, festivities. It is much more than that, and unlike Memorial Day, it is set aside to pay tribute to all those living men and women who proudly wore the uniform. Clearly, it is a day to recognize the responsibilities which come with being a veteran. It embodies sacrifice, a sense of duty, and probably most important of all, upholding honor. Those words dictate the mission which all veterans choose to uphold. There is a telling scene from Thomas Bolt's notable play, A Man for All Seasons, that best describes this commitment to sacrifice, duty, and honor. Many are familiar with the life of Sir Thomas More. I think he's probably my famous historical character in history, of course, also known as the patron saint of lawyers. As the story goes, when Henry VIII sought an annulment from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, he utilized the services of the Duke of Norfolk, Thomas Cromwell, and others to sign the oath of succession, to convince Sir Thomas to sign the oath of succession. More, a noted canon scholar and staunch defender of the Roman Catholic Church, refused and willingly gave up his life as part of his mission to the church. Prior to his death, however, Norfolk kept pleading with Sir Thomas to put aside his honor and go along with Henry's wishes. Sir Thomas refused. And in these immortal words, he made honor and mission the benchmark of one's character. Quote, and when we stand before God and you are sent to paradise for doing according to your conscience, and I am damned for not doing according to mine, will you come with me for fellowship? More symbolizes that which all veterans accept as part of their military mission. Uphold the commitment for which you were trained and place others before yourself. In similar vein, being a veteran, is analogous to a calling, a vocation dictated by conscience, whether conscripted or volunteering. Today, we have an all-volunteer force. When I was serving, of course, there was a draft. Veterans took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and without mental reservation or equivocation. That in and of itself implies an immense responsibility, a conscientious acceptance to assume the risks and sacrifices that comes with serving in the armed forces. Accepting that challenge also brings with it its own code of honor, service before self. In other words, a veteran is one who has demonstrated the willingness to sacrifice personal gain for the principle of honor in service to others. And what do we really mean by honor? Like Sir Thomas More, a veteran's sense of honor is dictated by conscience. Sadly, in society today, it appears that many people have less of an obligation to others and more of a devotion to personal self-interest. Let others take the risks, so long as I am safe and sound. In contrast to that way of thinking, a veteran is one who embodied selfless sacrifice and honor, knowing right from wrong, while understanding full well that one's actions have a direct impact on the lives of others. Lastly, a veteran is one who also has understood the awesome responsibility of teamwork, working together as one to achieve the mission's objective. All of that is based upon trust and honesty, and there is no greater reward than others entrusting their lives to you out of respect for your honesty and leadership. In the heat of battle, a veteran knows only one way to respond: the mission, the men and women, and then myself. So today, when statistically there are less than 10% of the entire adult population who have served in the military, it's time to recognize their commitment. It's time to say thank you. And of course, we overuse that thank you for the service. Rather than saying thank you for your service, let's thank those veterans for their honesty, their commitment, and their courage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuck, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I want to show, I had 2 more photos saved for you. Would you like to give a caption for that photo?
Yeah, that's our first winning soccer team. Of course, there's Doc Goldman. I mean, there's one of the best players we had on the team, John Sieverdink from Holland. Of course, Paul, Cecilia, all right, our goalkeeper. Of course, that's the Chuckster right there. And there's Dan, he was the other co-captain. He was our center. Geez, Gordy Walton over here, Denny Verona. I think Denny's a practicing attorney now. Bob Minota. I mean, there was just great guys great guys, good players. And
What year was this?
that was
year?
1967. 1967. Another roommate of mine, Tom Davin. It was a wonderful team. But was most important, I know Doc Goldman was building up the program, and he was moving in the right direction. Billy Trunk, who's no longer with us right here.
Mhm.
It was an interesting season, and we won the last game, and that's what solidified the winning season. And I was very proud of that. I was very proud to be the co-captain of that team. We worked our butts off to win, and I think we started the process by that point of Doc building up the program to where it is today. It's a very good soccer program, very good program.
And we have one more photo.
Okay. This is the induction ceremony posthumously in my father's honor. There's State Senator Phil Boyle presenting the dedication certificate to me, accepting it on behalf of my late father. And to my left is my son, Patrick. At that point, he was teaching. He was on the faculty and staff at West Point. So he drove up to Albany for the ceremony. He was very close to his grandfather. And of course, the funny part of it is when my father was alive, my oldest son, Sean, he went to the Air Force Academy. But when Patrick went to West Point, well, that's it, Army, God, West Point. So they were very close. So I wanted Patrick to be there for that particular dedication.
Wonderful. Thank you. If anyone has any questions for Chuck or Austin, who I believe is still on in the background, please let us know. Nothing's come in right now, Chuck. But I know we have folks on from around the country, because I know, for example, Bill Zabicki's on from Texas, an Army veteran. Yes. As well as some others. So we'll give them a shout out. Bill Kuffner's on as well.
Good. Hey, Billy.
Yep. But no questions so far. So there we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So I wanted to let everyone know we did record this morning's flag raising, Pledge of Allegiance, and a performance by Marist singers of the national anthem. So we're posting that shortly to all of our social media channels. So it'll be on Facebook, Instagram, as well as our YouTube channel. So we'd love for you to check that out. And a recording of this presentation will also be available soon on the Marist Alumni YouTube channel. So if you know of anyone who missed it, you can definitely share that. But I want to thank President Weinman. I want to thank Austin Miller, and thank you, Chuck, for your wonderful inspirational words today. We really appreciate it. And we thank everyone for their service. We thank the active military as well as our veterans. We hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Veterans Day.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chuck. Thanks, Austin. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure.
Thank you. Nice meeting you, Chuck.
Nice meeting you, Austin. You too. Good luck, Kevin.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Amy, I'm going to leave.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
I'm going to go have my drink now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Birthday drink.
You've earned
Yes.
it. You've earned it.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.